the baby with the bathwater. So I leave that with you. I'm not against what you're attempting to do, but let's keep our eye on the ball, and what we need in this city, as in many others in Canada, are those units. Be they ideal or less than ideal, that's something we got to work towards to try to make the best of the situation we can do. Thanks.
On Orange Street, just 3 blocks up from this development. I already live in mixed housing. The infamous Blanchard apartments are connected to my house, more or less. I deal regularly with the people that live in those apartments. And they're poor, but they're very nice. I feel sorry for them. Like, no one should have to live under those conditions. And so, while this may not be ideal, it certainly addresses an answer for a lot of those people. And I really feel it should go ahead.
And I am very much in support of a mixed housing, but part of this housing, this particular project, what it fails to address is one of the big problems that we have in the South End, and that is the single mom with some children. And a 1-bedroom unit excludes them, and they make up a big part of our community. And if we're going to go ahead with a big project like that, I think there's got to be room in there to address these young ladies and their families. Thank you.
And now I'd like to share something.
My name is Michelle Hooten. I live at 122 Carmarthen Street. I guess we moved into the neighborhood about 10 years ago, and I have thought a lot about this since the last community meeting, trying to figure out what was fueling my interest in it, and it is fear, and it's hard to say that out loud, but that's sort of the fire that is inside the discussion that I continue to have. 10 years ago, when my family moved to Carmarthen Street, I can remember in the middle of an afternoon there being 4 police cars all facing one another, and all of the cops were out of the car and had a man face down on the street with a gun pointed to his head and his knee shoved between the man's shoulder. And that wasn't that uncommon. And now, 10 years later, when I walk down to the recycle bins, it's remarkable to me to see the transformation of Carmarthen Street and how much I appreciate the fact that there are window boxes with flowers growing in them and, you know, spectacular gardens on the side of the street and people turning what you could never imagine ever to be inhabitable into stunning, stunning homes. So it's a community that has taken the neighborhood back, and that is very inspiring because I've raised my family. My children are gone now, and Ralph and I are thinking about growing old in this neighborhood, so we're pretty attached to it. So I've had the unique opportunity of being in every building in the South End 3 times. and so what I want to share is this. This was first-hand experience. The buildings that I went into that were all comparable income or no incomes, completely subsidized buildings, I would campaign during the daytime. And when I would knock on the doors, for the most part, they were too afraid to open their doors. And it broke my heart, and particularly when they did open the door, because most of us can't imagine what it would be like to live in that small a space with a toilet, with everything that you own crammed into it, and when the door would pull open and you would just see this bleakness in their face with no hope and absolutely no intention of voting, because what difference did it make? It was just beyond anything that you would think was fair. No one should have to live like that. And then when I would go into the buildings that were mixed, it was remarkable, because although the people that were living in the subsidized units had very little, they were so proud. And they would have, you know, a little wreath on the door with a nice little mat outside that would say welcome, and their shoes would be neatly stacked beside the door. They couldn't wait for me to get there, and they just wanted to talk really about nothing, but they were just so happy. And so I think that there's a lot of money on the line here. And I've renovated buildings. I know what kind of money it takes to put up a building. And if the government is willing to invest, which is awesome that they are, and if our neighborhood has been identified as a site, that's fabulous to have that kind of investment. So as a community, this is our opportunity to do something better than bleak, something spectacular, something that gives the residents that live in that building hope, and something that we, who already are residents here, that we're proud of, the way we are proud of Leinster Court when we walk by. You know, you can puff up your chest and say, you know, we fought for that, because that is not what it was going to look like when it was first proposed. So I just wanted to offer the difference between when you're actually in those buildings, because most of us wouldn't be in those buildings because you wouldn't have any reason to be, but they're light years apart. One has no hope and one is full of joy. Thank you.
As the proposed development. And like Michelle, I have a fear. But it's for the people that are proposed to go in there. Excuse me. Many of these people have difficulties. They're of mixed diagnosis. The developer has already told us that. And one of the worst things that can happen is that some of these people will take advantage of the others. There's no way of avoiding it when you cram them together like that. Nowhere in the Western world is pushing for grouping people together in a place that looks more like a Victorian poorhouse. I would love to see 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments there. I know some of the people who will be applying to go into these apartments. Some of them even live at the moment in apartments that are bigger than the ones that are proposed here. But because their rents are so high, they would rather live there, because they'll be subsidised there. Where they are at the moment, there's no subsidisation allowed. You should allow subsidisation in private developments as well as this kind of situation. If everybody, and I know some of the landlords in this community, good landlords who have good apartments, who would willingly bring people in if they could get a subsidised rent. There's no need to have subsidised rents crammed into one building. And those people that they're proposing to go into that building have to be looked after. And the amount of support that they're likely to get after the government has cut 35 human service councillors from this area is diminished considerably. The chances of them seeing any of the people more than once a month is extremely slim. I'm sorry for these councillors. They're overworked already and they're wonderful people. We must have a mixed development. It's really, that will help all the people. Thank you.
I do agree that the building should be built. The waiting list in St. John for singles to obtain affordable housing is twice or 3 times as much as families. I do live in housing. I do have a family. I'm a single mother of 3. But you got to realize there's people that live in those abandoned, vacant buildings that propose safety issues for them as well. Or the rooming houses, like they're not the greatest either. I mean, some are great, but they can't afford it. Some people live on $280 a month, and that, like, a rooming house goes what, $300, $400 a month. There's some that are like $200, but that's not enough. They need a place to stay that's affordable, just like any other people with families.